For those who enjoy fishing walleye in rivers, the St. Clair River in southeast Michigan is unique. Transient walleye from Lake Huron and Lake Erie converge in huge numbers on the St. Clair River every spring. On this week's episode of Fishing 411, Mark and Jake use the Yakima bait Spin-n-Glo bottom walker, teamed up with the HammerTime walleye spinner to showcase this unique river fishery. Trolling downstream just fast enough to get the blade of the crawler harnesses rotating, bottom bouncing covers water quickly and rates as one of the best ways to put a ton of fish in the boat.
Wow, this is absolutely stellar. What a gorgeous fish. We're gonna get a quick picture for Facebook and then she's going back to do some spawning.
Got a little tug on the line here. That's always a good thing. Always a good thing. I have not seen this rascal yet, so we'll find out real quick here what the scoop is. Well, it's the object of our affections. Not a very big one. But nonetheless, that is a walleye, and that's exactly what we're looking for today. We're going to be doing something a little different. We're fishing the St. Clair River, and most of the time when you associate walleyes and rivers, most people would be thinking about jigging. But today, we're going to be running bottom bouncers and spinners with night crawlers and giving ourselves a little bit different look at them. I'm going to have to get a little bigger than that one, Jake, to impress me. This week's episode is filmed on the St. Clair River. We actually launched at the Black River Access Site near Port Huron, Michigan.
Hooked up, Dad.
Good for you. I'll man the net here as soon as I get my line out of the water for you.
Cool. Now, one of the things that I love about bottom bouncer fishing is not just because it's a simple style of fishing, but it's a rod and hand style of fishing, and it's different. It's not the same kind of bite that you would associate with a vertical jigging bite, just kind of a mushy feeling there. But the one thing when you're vertical jigging, you got to be quick to set the hook, and that's not the case with bottom bouncers. You feel that bite, you give the fish an opportunity to grab a hold of it and stay hooked up. And the rod that we're using, we're going to talk more about the rod, but that's just as important for actually just fishing the bottom bouncer itself. There you go, Dad.
Nice fish there, Jake.
Nice.
Nice fish.
Nice eater fish there. We're going to talk about the rod, and I'm going to use a big word, and the word that I'm going to use is called a parabolic bend, and that is so important for bottom bouncer fishing. This rod here, the entire rod bends. If you use too stiff of a rod in a bottom bouncer application, the fish will feel the weight and the resistance the same time you feel the fish, and a lot of times you'll just simply miss those fish. So a little bit softer action rod is so important for it. What you want is to be able to feel that fish before he feels the resistance of the rod, and that's how you're going to catch a lot of fish.
The thing with river fishing is most people just pretty much get focused on jig fishing, and jig fishing is very productive, there's no doubt about it, but it's not the only way to catch these fish. And that's a pretty good looking fish right there, Jakers.
Let's see if I can grab the net for you.
I appreciate that, young man. Look how beautiful, clear that water is. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Take a look at that. That's a pretty decent eating sized walleye, and that's pretty much what we're going to be seeing today. This is not about trophy fishing. It's later in the walleye run. This is actually the middle of June, and the good jig bite is still going on. There's still guys jig fishing, but if you're not a real skilled jig fisherman, maybe you might want to consider the bottom bouncer and spinner, because it's a very easy method to learn, very easy to master, and as you can see, it's very productive at catching eating-sized walleyes.
You know, when you're going to pull bottom bouncers in a river situation, speed is not really that important. If I was out in the lake right now and I was pulling a bottom bouncer, I'd probably tell you to go between 1.3 and 1.5 miles an hour. Well, when you're in a river, you really don't have to worry too much about the speed. You want to go just faster than the current itself. So we're in the St. Clair River today, and the St. Clair River has a lot of current. So you're going to be drifting at about 2.5 to 3 miles an hour. That's just based off the current. Now what I do is I put the nose of the boat going down current, and I get the boat going just a little bit faster. When you put your harness in the water, you're going to take a look at it. If it's just kind of wobbling back and forth, you're not going fast enough. If you got that nice rotation on your blade, now you're perfect. Go ahead and drop that down to the bottom. And that's going to change throughout the day, because you're going to find spots in the river that have more current and spots that have less current. So what I would recommend is just keep checking throughout the day. There's not that one set perfect speed. Go a little bit faster than the current, and you're going to catch a lot of fish.
Special considerations are provided by Cisco Fishing Systems and Striker brands. Go early, go late, go prepared. Additional considerations provided by Fishhawk Electronics. Trolling without a fishhawk is called boating.
Well, you know, Jake was talking a little bit about the importance of speed with a bottom bouncer. Once you get your speed set, then of course you're going to deploy your bottom bouncer to the bottom, and you don't want to free spool it. You don't want it to go down too fast, because if it goes down too fast, the leader might actually come back up and catch on the bouncer and tangle before it ever even gets a chance to do any work for you. So put your finger on the spool and let the line go out kind of slowly until you get the bouncer till it contacts the bottom. Once you contact the bottom, you're going to find that at about a 45-degree angle behind the back of the boat is going to be just about ideal. You should be able to drop your rod tip back and feel the bouncer hit the bottom, and then just kind of hold it. And you don't have to put any action on it. You don't have to do anything other than just kind of holding it nice and steady. And then when you do get a bite, what's going to happen is you're just going to feel the weight of that fish. You're going to feel the rod start to load up. And when you feel that weight of the fish, of course, then you can start to put some pressure on, set the hook, and it's game on.
You know, when you're fishing a bottom bouncer, it's exactly how it sounds. It's a bottom bouncer. You want to stay in contact with the bottom. That's pretty much true for all walleyes and river applications. These walleyes are tight to bottom, and if you're too far up off bottom, you're just simply out of the strike zone. So you want to keep that bottom bouncer as close to the bottom as possible, and you can feel that contact. That bottom bouncer, I could feel it go tick, 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 and then as soon as that fish bit, it was kind of like a mushy feeling, and that's the bite. And then all you got to do is just set the hook, and you got a fish.
I haven't seen him yet. He stayed down a little bit better maybe than some of the other ones have.
Oh yeah, nice fish.
Oh, yeah, that is a good looking fish. Definitely a good looking fish.
There we go.
Excellent.
You know, the rule of bottom bouncer fishing is the 45 rule. That's by far, that's what you want to go for. And so what you do when you're trying to decide what size of bottom bouncer you're going to fish, it's all about keeping that 45-degree angle. If you're in shallower water or the current isn't as fast, maybe you only have to use a 1-ounce bottom bouncer. But today we're fishing in about 25 to 30 feet of water, but what we have is fast current. Because the current is fast, I have to use a heavier bottom bouncer. This is a 3-ounce bottom bouncer that I'm using right now, and that's what it takes to keep that 45-degree angle. If I was to fish somewhere with a little less current, then I would use a little bit less of a bottom bouncer. But in my opinion, in the world of bottom bouncers, a 1, 2, and 3-ounce bottom bouncer is going to be what you need for almost all applications.
This is fun. This is really easy fishing, fun fishing, and a great way to put some high-quality fish in the freezer. Look at that. Oh. Give me your little rascal. This is probably not the best way of landing them. Landing net is always a good choice, but hey, if they get off, there's plenty more. Lots of fish to be caught here today. Lots of fish to be caught. The bottom bouncer we're using is a little bit different than a typical bottom bouncer you'd see. This one's made by Yakima bait. It's called a Spin-n-Glo bottom walker, and it functions a little bit differently in that it's got an attractor here on the arm. It's got a Spin-n-Glo on the arm, and the beauty of that is it gives you just a little bit more flash and a little bit more attraction. On the business end, of course, we still got the traditional harness that we would normally run, and this is a HammerTime walleye harness here. And this particular color that seems to be doing pretty good right now is what they call Pink Confusion. There's about 18 different colors you can pick from these harnesses, but my go-to day in and day out is this Pink Confusion. It seems to work really well in this clear Great Lakes water that we fish in so often.
Hooked up here, Dad.
Well, that's the good news. The bad news is you're standing in the landing net, son.
I gotta get off the electric motor power and we'll just drift here. This one's got a little bit of weight to it. You know, one of the things when you're bottom bouncer fishing or harness fishing in general, normally your speed is right around 1.2 to 1.5 miles an hour. Don't worry about the speed when you're in a river application. What you want to do is you want to go just faster than the current. And you'll see your harness, once it starts actually rotating, then your speed's right. But it doesn't matter. Like right now, we're actually going about 3.5 miles an hour just to keep enough speed. There we go, Dad.
That's a good one.
You know, we're actually going about 3.5 miles an hour just to keep enough speed for the blade to rotate. So what we're doing is we're turning the boat and going down current and then just going a little bit faster than the current, and that's what it's taking to put a lot of fish in the boat.
If you've watched Fishing 4-on-1 in the last few years, you've noticed we use a lot of Pro-Cure. We like the Super Gel. It's a natural-based fishing scent, and this great success we have with it. But today we're using live bait, and you'd wonder, why do you need Pro-Cure, or why do you need a fishing scent when you already have the advantage of live bait? Well, night crawlers definitely have a nice earthy smell to them. There's no question about that. But after you've fished a night crawler for a while, you're washing off most of the odor that it has. And so by taking a little bit of Pro-Cure, and we're using, of course, night crawler scent, and recharging that night crawler, gets that earthy scent down there and keeps that night crawler scent down there all the time. So it gives us a little bit more advantage here. It allows us to get a little bit more mileage out of our live bait. And these days, night crawlers aren't cheap. So it's nice to be able to fish a night crawler for a while and then put a little bit more scent on it and keep it fresh down there. Keep it smelling like what a night crawler is supposed to smell like.
Special considerations provided by Precision Trolling, the Troller's Bible. Special considerations provided by the Ultimate Sport Show Tour, Michigan's elite sport shows. Eagle Claw presents the 411 on fishing.
We know just about everyone who's spent any time trolling has come to the conclusion that crankbaits are great lures for catching fish. We all agree on that. But the problem with crankbaits is you just can't look at one and tell how deep it dives. And even the manufacturers are not a lot of help here, because manufacturers don't have the luxury of testing their crankbaits to determine exactly how deep they dive. And that's what precision trolling data is all about. What we do is go out on the water and we control all the variables, with the idea being to determine exactly how deep a crankbait will dive based on some very important variables, things like lead length and also line diameter. You know, there's a lot of factors that influence how deep a crankbait is going to dive, but the primary factors, the things you got to be really concerned with, are things like line diameter. Thinner lines allow crankbaits to dive deeper than what thicker lines would. The other thing you have to be concerned with is what we call lead length or feet back. And the further you put a crankbait back behind the boat, the deeper it's naturally going to dive. So if you control those two variables, you can very well predict exactly how deep a crankbait is going to go below the surface. So essentially at Precision Trolling Data, what we do is we troll crankbaits past a scuba diver who's determining exactly how deep they're going below the surface. It's really quite that simple, but it's a little bit more complex than that. What I mean about complexities is that everybody doesn't fish exactly the same type of line or the same diameter line, and so what we're obligated to do is to test a variety of different line types and line diameters. What that does is it gives fishermen a fighting chance of knowing how deep a lure is going to go on exactly the type of gear they're likely to be fishing with.
14.3, 143.
14.3, good number. You know, when it comes to line types, we typically use both braid and monofilament for testing these lures. If a lure happens to be something that would be applicable to, say, walleye fishing, a 10-pound test monofilament is going to be a really good choice. Or we might also do 10-4 braid, 10-pound test 4-pound diameter braid. But what if a bait is used for something else, like maybe a salmon lure would be typically trolled on more heavier lines? So then in that case, we would more likely use something like 20-pound test monofilament. So all of the data that we collect at Precision Trolling Data ultimately ends up in a phone app. Now, of course, a phone app is going to be the ideal way for people to get this information and be able to use it on the water. The beauty of a phone app is that once the information is loaded to your phone, you don't even need cell coverage to use it. As long as the battery is good on your phone, you can look up all the information you need to determine how deep your favorite crankbaits are diving below the surface. You know, one of the other things that Precision Trolling Data does is it kind of debunks some theories out there. For example, a lot of people believe that trolling speed influences how deep a crankbait dives. Actually, that's not true at all. Floating diving style crankbaits, which are typically used in the industry, are not speed dependent. What I mean by that is that you control them a variety of different speeds and they still go to the same depth. Now speed does have some changes. It changes the action of a lure. If you speed up, the action of the lure is going to be more aggressive. If you slow down, the action is going to be deadened a little bit. But speed does not determine how deep a crankbait dives below the surface. So while it's interesting that speed really doesn't matter in terms of how deep a floating diving crankbait is going to go, speed does matter in other regards. For example, if a lure that you're using or a device that you're trolling with sinks, if it's negatively buoyant, speed makes a big difference. And in that case, the slower you go, the deeper a device is going to fish. The faster you go, the more higher in the water column it's going to typically run. So if a device sinks, we test them at speeds and then we post that speed on the app. So if you don't see a speed, it's because it's not necessary or not relevant to that particular device. So at Precision Trolling Data, we actually come by our name naturally. Essentially what we're doing is we're using as much precision as is humanly possible to control all the variables so that when we put things in the water and troll them, we can determine exactly how deep they dive. Now how close do we measure? Literally right down to the inch. So at Precision Trolling Data, we started our company testing crankbaits, but these days we test just about anything a guy would troll with. No matter what you're fishing with, whether it's a crankbait, a snap weight, a dip sea diver, lead core line, copper line, no matter what you're fishing with, we've probably tested it at Precision Trolling Data. We've been testing crankbaits and other trolling gear for about 25 years. In the early days, we published our data in a book, but these days it's much more appropriate to put that data in a phone app. And the reason for that is we can update an app very, very quickly and a much more convenient way for people to use the data. So if you're looking for precision trolling data these days, you're looking for it in a phone app.
Special considerations are provided by Trailmaster Trailers and Daiwa Corporation. Special considerations are provided by Procure, ruthlessly effective bait sense.
Oh, we are hooked up again here. Look at that. Cool. When you talk about a straightforward and simple presentation, a bottom bouncer is about as easy as it gets. All you're essentially doing is letting it out until it hits the bottom and keeping about a 45-degree angle to your line. And that's pretty much as simple gets. So I'm just going to alley-oop this one. Jakey's not that big. About the same eating size as what we've been looking at here. Come on in here. He might be skinny, but he's going to put some nice fillets on the table for us here.
Hooked up, Dad.
You hooked up?
Yeah. Yep. You know, one of the other really cool things about this style of fishing is the fact that it is a small boat fishery. It doesn't matter if you have a big boat or a small boat. It doesn't matter if you have an outboard or an inboard. This style of fishing you can do because all you're doing is turning the boat and going down the current and then just going a little bit faster than the current. So no matter what style of boat you have, you can be successful at this style of fishing. Right here, Dad.
Good looking fish. There, I got him for you.
Nice.
He will add nicely to our selection of fish in the live well.
Very cool. That's a chunky one. These really are the perfect eating size fish. You know, that 17 to 20, 22 inch range is what you're gonna find out here and find a lot of them. And they obviously are not having any trouble finding food because that is a very chunky walleye.
You know, the HammerTime spinners come in 18 different colors, and you know, walleye fishermen, we love lots of different colors, but today it seems like the painted finishes have been the best for us. This one I call Pink Confusion's real good, and Jake has got a Fire Tiger that's got a chartreuse back on it as well. Both of those have been working real well today. But believe it or not, you'll find a color that works just about in any kind of water conditions wherever you might be chasing walleyes. If you're fishing spinners, look at the HammerTime spinners by Yakima Bait. I think you'll be impressed. And the sizes that we recommend for this style of fishing are the smaller stuff. They come in a 4 and a 5, and they also come in a number 6. And we're running the number 4. And the reason we like the smaller blade is because this water is relatively clear. You don't need a lot of flash to attract these fish here. In fact, this water is very clear. So a 4 is a little bit more subtle, and it seems to be getting a few more bites for us.
You know, this green color has been pretty good so far today, Dad. I thought maybe, you know, this morning it was overcast and we went to those painted colored backs. That worked out really well. Then the sun popped out on us. I thought maybe going back to a copper color would work. But this green's been so good, it's hard to take it off.
Well, one of the nice things about these harnesses is they got quick change clevises on them, so I can switch one out here in no time. There we go.
Nice.
I can match that color, no problem. Well, you know, the St. Clair River has been pretty good to us today, but this presentation of fishing bottom bouncers and spinners and rivers is not unique to the St. Clair River. This works in all major rivers that have good populations of walleye. You know, here in the Great Lakes area, of course, it would work on the Detroit River. Places like the Saginaw River, it would work as well. If you go west, the Missouri River would be a good place to do this, and so would the Mississippi River, and quite honestly, even further west, all the way to our friends on the west coast, places like the Columbia River, they do a lot of bottom bouncer and spinner fishing. Thank you, Jake. Very nice eating grade walleye. Wow, was he hooked good too? He wasn't getting away.
Hooked up here, Dad.
Seems like I've been grabbing this net quite a bit for you.
That's okay. Look at
That's
the
not bad,
scenery we have, man. This is pretty
beautiful.
darn cool, driving by these really pretty houses, catching walleyes. Super, super cool, man.
It is pretty cool. I wouldn't mind having a place here myself someday, maybe in retirement years.
A little closer. See him yet?
I haven't seen him. Oh, there he is. There he is.
There we go.
He's not as big as the last one you caught, but he'll eat, I think. Hey, I'm Mark Romanack. Thanks for watching Fishing 411 this week. If you're one of those avid walleye fishermen who really hasn't spent much time in rivers because you're really not very confident in your jig fishing skills, you might want to try the bottom walker and spinner. As you'll see from this episode, it's a great way to put a lot of fish in the boat very quickly.
Closed captioning is provided by Lakeside Motorsports, Michigan's premier marine and power sports company. Fishing 411 is brought to you by Offshore Tackle, Ontario, Canada, Starcraft Marine, Yakima Bait Company, Smooth Moves, Niagara Falls, USA, Lowrance Electronics, Evinrude Outboards, and by Jay's Sporting Goods.